Larry Phillips has always been a conservationist. He's devoted his career to preserving wilderness and open space for future generations. The son of Seattle Times feature writer Marjorie Phillips and architect John Phillips, Larry is an Eagle Scout who grew up in Seattle. He's been married for 34 years to his wife Gail, and they're very close with their son Brett, who also lives and works in Seattle. Phillips entered public service after graduation from law school. He moved to Washington, D.C. to work for legendary Senator Henry Scoop Jackson. Larry returned to Seattle to run Randy Revell's successful campaign for King County executive and later served as his chief of staff. In 1988, Phillips was elected to the State House of Representatives, where he championed the state's Growth Management Act. It was groundbreaking legislation that requires local governments to manage growth, protect natural resource lands, and designate urban growth boundaries. Supporters called it a green wall against sprawl. After serving 2 terms in the legislature, Phillips was elected to the King County Council to represent District 4 in Northwest Seattle. And during his more than 2 decades on the council, Larry Phillips has helped to preserve 165,000 acres of farm and forest land. This includes 400 acres on Cougar Mountain to help preserve much of the peak for open space and wildlife habitat. 1,800 acres on Rattlesnake Ridge near North Bend.
And I always think about that when I'm able to travel up to North Bend or up to Snoqualmie Falls and think about that beauty, and that it'll be, much of it will be with us probably for as long as the river flow because of the initiatives that Larry Phillips as a King County council member took.
He has really done a lot to make sure that the farmlands in this county are preserved, that we have good, clean water, and I think that those will be the claims that he will have for generations.
And Maury Island Regional Park, one of the largest undeveloped properties located directly on Puget Sound.
From his first work in Olympia to pass the Growth Management Act, to then coming to the county for the bulk of his public career to enact those regulations and make them work on the practical level here in King County.
Phillips also championed the Waterways 2000 program. It helped preserve salmon runs along nearly 3,000 acres of 6 major rivers, including the Cedar River. For years, Larry Phillips took groups rafting down the Cedar River to learn about it firsthand and see the salmon habitat.
Fighting to make sure that our salmon populations remain at sustainable levels and making sure there's habitat for that. It's fun to watch Larry walk into a room and work on those issues because it's something that he cares truly about, and you can just see it in him.
He has spearheaded many of the programs that exist today in King County that make sure the next generation has the same quality of life that we have had.
He also often took his staff to enjoy King County's many parks.
Hi, Mom.
And that's more accurate, shorter. It's in.
Phillips also helped establish a permanent endowment for arts and culture. It's helped fund projects at the Seattle Art Museum, the Olympic Sculpture Garden, and the Museum of History and Industry. In recent years, Phillips has turned his attention to transportation. As a Sound Transit Board member, he served as chair of the Central Link Oversight Committee during construction of light rail from downtown Seattle to Tukwila. He also led successful efforts to pass a regional mass transit expansion package that includes building 36 additional miles of light rail. Larry Phillips leaves office just as the county has passed its first Strategic Climate Action Plan, a 5-year blueprint for confronting climate change. Among the goals are doubling transit ridership by 2040 and permanently conserving high-priority farm, forest, and open spaces throughout King County for future generations. Yes, Larry Phillips has always been a conservationist, and we thank him for his many years of public service.